Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. I'm your host, Kendra Corman, and today we're going to talk about one of my more favorite topics, podcasting. And today I'm joined by Kristin. So, welcome, Kristin. Thank you so much for joining me.
Kendra, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, let's talk about your journey to podcasting. How did you get into it?
Yeah, so my journey with podcasting in particular started in 2016. I definitely had one of those iPod touches where I'm pretty sure I had 3 podcasts that I listened to. And I had a good friend of mine who is well known in the Christian circle of radio. And he was like, Kristin, we're leaving radio because we want to be more open about what's really going on inside of family and marriages and just talk about the good old ugly conversations that radio was putting the kibosh on. And we want a producer to help us basically start this whole podcast. And I was like, cool, cool, cool. What does a producer do? And he was like, you already do it. You just keep doing what you do. Just come in and watch our producer at the radio do what she does and then implement that as a podcast. And so, um, yeah, so I basically was thrown into the deep end in 2016, no idea what I was doing. And at that point was more of like a content creator, guest scheduler, book reader. Man, we had like 10 books a week that we would get in the mail that we would read through. And I should say, I read through, and then I would say, hey, you should probably have a conversation about this topic since that's your vision. And so I did that for about 4 years. And basically, they mentored me on how I could use my voice as well. And what that looked like was more, they would pull me into the conversation. They would say, hey, producer K, we want to hear from you. And I was like, I don't think anybody really wants to hear from me. And I was very shy, timid. I would much rather be behind the camera, the setup, all of that. And over again, they just kept reiterating, like, no, your voice matters too. And people want to hear what you have to say. And so slowly but surely, I had a little bit more bravery going on and courage to move forward. And by 2020, we had shifted some things. And so they basically gave me a blessing to start my own podcast. And so I launched my first podcast as a host in 2020, which is when all of America started a podcast. And it was perfect timing too, because in that season, there were so many people asking, Kristin, how did you start a podcast? Like 4 years ago, and you built it into a number one kids and family podcast. And that was really cool because just organically, people were asking, how do you do a podcast? And it was just super fun to help so many podcasters start, including myself in that era. So yeah, it's been a long time. So been in all sorts of roles.
It is just such an interesting story and definitely meant to be for you to be going down that podcasting path.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk a little bit more about that emotion that you had. Maybe it was a little bit of fear holding you
Mm-hmm.
back, right? Saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. That holds back a lot of people. Talk to me about when you're working with people starting a podcast, how do you get them to get over the fear of stumbling, which I say and so and a bunch of other things
Yep.
all the time
Me
myself,
too.
them not liking their own voice. I mean, they're scared to put it out there.
Yeah.
How do you help them get over that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I resonate with all of those emotions of, yep, I thought my voice was annoying. So that was a big hindrance at the very beginning.
It's not.
And one of my best friends was like, Kristin, your voice is so peaceful. I don't know why you think it's annoying. And that's usually what my clients are struggling with, that very concept of, well, my voice is just annoying. And usually they're the most beautiful sounding voices. You're like, I'm pretty sure that's a lie that you're telling yourself. So that is definitely a portion of that. And then there are some people that say, I know that I'm supposed to start a podcast, but I don't know what I bring to the table. What would I say? Or who am I? That's a huge question. Who am I to start a podcast? And of course, that goes in every genre, whether you're writing a book or speaking. Who am I to be here speaking about this? And it reminds me of a client of mine that I helped launch her podcast with her. And she kept hitting this wall over and over again where she would go to record her first episode. And then I would ask, hey, how did the first episode go? And she would say, I didn't do it. And so this was like weeks of this process. And finally, we came together in a group setting with other brand new podcasters. And I was like, all right, how did it go? And she was like, I just can't seem to press record. I keep just saying, who am I to start a podcast? I'm just a quote unquote stay at home mom. I'm just a firefighter's wife. I'm just da da da. And it was an instant clarity moment as a coach when you're like, yeah, who are you? I want you to just reiterate what you just said. And it was such a shifting moment for her. And I think from that moment on, it was a great tool for me as a podcast coach to say, yeah, who are you that you're bringing to the table? It is very unique. You have walked through very specific stories that will in turn impact somebody else's life in no other way than through your voice. And so that is the number one question that I love to ask is, yeah, who are you?
Well, and I think that goes along with imposter syndrome. Like,
Mhm.
again, who am I to be doing this and giving marketing advice? There's other people that are better or more experienced or this or that. And yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody, but you know different things from other people, and you have a talent, and you should be sharing what you have to share with the world because
Absolutely.
there's just so much opportunity.
Yeah. I think about Dave Ramsey, like he's got the financial freedom in the bag, right? But then you think about all of these other podcasters. There's a new podcast that I just found. They're some of my favorites, and they're called Financial Coaching for Women. So plug to them. But they nail it. They take it to a whole different level because it's coming from women. It's coming from a real life perspective. And it's just different flavor. I resonate with them way more than I would resonate with Dave Ramsey or, tried that, did that. Moving on. Let's hear from them and their perspectives as moms, as women who are best friends, and they have really done the work. So that's an example of, yeah, somebody might have a corner on the market or they're known for that talk, like Brene Brown and shame, those go together. But your story will definitely be so much different. It's the same topic, but again, a different filter.
I like that. Same topic, different filter, because you're filtering it differently. You're sharing it differently. You're providing a different perspective that people may not have heard before. And I think that that's really important. And so as we're starting 2025 here, we're kicking it off. We really need to be thinking about where, if you have something to say, if you're looking to grow your business, if you're looking to get the word out, even if you're just looking, I mean, I tell people to make social media posting easier,
Mm-hmm.
a podcast is an amazing tool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned that I want to go back to was you started your podcast in 2020 when everybody was starting a podcast, right? Because we could talk with a microphone, or we couldn't necessarily do things in person. A lot of them didn't make it.
No, I know. It's so sad.
I know, but what do you think caused them to, I don't want to say fail because I don't think fail is the right word for it. And I don't think that just because it's not the right thing for you doesn't mean it's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think it caused them to go away or not be around anymore?
Yeah. I think the perspective at the beginning is where we probably lost a lot of people was this is a long game. This is not a quick fix. Let's get instant social media attention. This is long form content where you are providing a space where people can know, like, and trust you. And understanding that it is a slow grow. over time. And the people that have really stuck it out are the ones that are in that boat of success in their filter of perspective of what success means. And those are the people that I'm like, you're amazing. You knew that it was going to be a long haul, and it wasn't, I'm going to give it a year. And if nothing happens or my numbers aren't 1 million downloads, I'm out. I think just having that realistic expectation of this is a commitment. It is. And with the people that I work with, I love that there is a connection of, I know I'm called to use my voice. And so therefore I'm going to choose to keep walking. Are there seasons when you pause or you rest? Absolutely. But it is about that long game, putting yourself out there over and over again.
I really like that. Yes, it is a long game. It is not short. My first podcast had pod fade, and it was back in like 2018 or something like that. I'm wishing that I had thought more through it and had a strategy and a
Yes.
goal, and rather than just, I'm just going to start talking because I didn't want to talk anymore. I was like, all right, peace out. We're done. So yeah, I get the feelings, all of the sides, right? I get the fear. I get the wondering who you are. I get the, instant gratification culture that we live in, that we want immediate results. And so I think all of that affects whether or not people start podcasts. But let's talk about that. Oh, if I don't get these unbelievable results of 1 million downloads, or if I'm not ranked number one in my category, then what's the point?
Yeah.
I know that, and this might be old information. This might be 2 years old, I think, but I know I host with Buzzsprout. That's my favorite. We'll have a link in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. It's really easy to host there. But I host with Buzzsprout, and I think they said to be in the top 50% of podcasts on Buzzsprout, you needed, or it might have been top 25% of podcasts, you needed like 40 downloads a week.
Yeah.
It's not a ton.
It's not. And I know even more recent data in November that just came out that I'm going to botch the numbers, but it's something like there's 4.2 million podcasts out there, but only 300,000 are actually active, which is mind blowing and means that there's a whole market that is not saturated at all. So you definitely have an opportunity there to get your voice heard.
I think that's really important to note, because we talked about how everybody and their brother was starting one in 2020. Now we're talking about the fact that they didn't all make it. And actually, a ridiculous number of them did not make it, even longer term ones. There's a gentleman who was on my podcast last year, I think. I don't know if it was January 2024 or December 2023. His name is Mike Capuzzi. He founded a company, and he basically helps people write short, helpful books. Shooks. So we'll link to his. He used to have an author's podcast. Well, recently in November, I think it's October, November, he changed it over. So after his 250th episode, he wrapped up his author-based podcast and has launched a new one, something different. So out of those 4 million plus podcasts, the podcasters didn't always necessarily go away either. They just decided to try a new topic. But he made 250 episodes, which is not a small achievement. I mean, I can't even remember which one. This is going to be a big number too, but it's over 250. So yeah, this episode is 268 is where we're recording it. It's a lot of work to get to 250. And I don't think necessarily people are abandoning what they were doing, but they're evolving, and they're evolving it into new shows. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think, again, people are always saying, well, podcasting is oversaturated. Blog posts are oversaturated. This is over. Yes, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of content. AI helps us with that. AI hurts us with that. But again, what are your thoughts when people come to you and say, well, I don't think I should start one because everybody has one?
Yeah, again, kind of going back to you are uniquely you. And I think to what you were just saying of the gentleman who has grown to a different content piece, basically, is pretty common because we grow as humans. So I can think of a number of different podcasters who have rebranded, who have changed to a whole different show, or they have 5, 6, 7 different shows that they are producing right now to satisfy that very common multi-entrepreneur spirit that a lot of us podcasters have. And that's totally fine. I think that the more that we consistently can show up and actually be authentically ourselves, the better that we're going to serve the people that are brought into our influence and our circles. So I don't think there's an issue with that. And even personally, my first podcast in 2020 that was my own, it morphed that one. I even took a whole year off this last year just to pause and just reflect on my own journey that I needed to. And then my other podcast coaching for Kingdom Entrepreneurs, continued, and I kept recording with that one. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can go about podcasting. And I love that there really are no rules. You just show up like you need to show up. But I think what you were hitting on is that there does need to be some sort of vision, strategy, pillars, a roadmap, something to keep us in line. And when the time comes to pivot or rebrand, you can absolutely do that. Just make sure you communicate it really well with your people.
I think that that's really important. I used to be like all over the place with all of the interesting marketing topics that I would cover with my guests, and you had no idea what I was going to cover this week. And you know, to be honest with you, neither did I. Some weeks. So I got more focused, and my listens and downloads started to increase. And I think that helped being true to the audience and thinking about what I like to listen about in podcasts.
Mhm.
So let's say somebody is coming to you right now, anybody who's listening or watching right now, and they're really interested in starting a podcast. They've decided they're going to hit that record button. What's the first thing that you recommend that they do before they get started and hitting that record?
Yeah, I typically recommend, okay, where do you want this to go? What is the goal of the podcast? What's your why? And who is it for? When you can establish your vision, who it's for, and really how do you want to get there, that in itself is going to set you up better than, I would say, majority of people that just start and they go and they press record, like you as a brave soul that would just go press record, because I think it will help you stay accountable to your lane. And I would say most podcasters are doing this out of a servant heart. We want to make an impact on the world. We want to make people laugh. We want to entertain. We want to educate. We want to transform lives. So if we can get really clear on that why on those days when you're like, I do not want to press record, you can remember, okay, there is somebody on the other side of it, whether it's 5 listeners that listen to your show every week or 5,000 listeners that listen to your show, that they are waiting to hear what you have to say that week or that day, whatever rhythm you decide to go in.
Yes. And I love that there are no rules in podcasting. There are no rules. A friend of mine, unfortunately, her mom passed away, and it took a lot out of her. And so she took some time off.
Yeah.
And then jumped right back into it when she was ready. And I have so much respect for her doing that. And then she kicked back off talking about why she had a little bit of a gap. And it wasn't a huge one because she had recorded ahead of time.
Mhm.
But it was just enough for her to be comfortable with what she was doing. But there are no rules. You know, a friend of mine was doing every 2 weeks and then moved to every 3 weeks temporarily when work got crazy. Like, there are no rules. I would say the only rule that I recommend is being consistent to some extent. Let me ask you this question. So one person that I talked to, she had a podcast. She actually had 2 podcasts. One she did as, she told me, as like seasons. And she had 12 episodes a season. So twice a year, she released 12 episodes, like all at once, just 12 episodes that thoroughly covered whatever topic it was that she was covering. I don't know. Even that, there's no rules, right?
Right.
People could binge it and be done. What are your
Absolutely.
thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, I've definitely worked with clients where we batched out like 20 episodes and then they take a break. My advice in that situation is make sure you communicate that to the listeners. So if you know you're only going to put out 12 episodes, then making sure that at the very beginning you're saying this is a 12 episode series, and then I will come back in the next season, probably in the spring or in the summer. Just making sure that you communicate. I think communication is just like with any relationship, that you're sharing what you potentially know and you're communicating well. So I don't think there's a problem with it. I like to call it the Holy Spirit override. If you go to any podcasting conference, if there are any rules, it is consistency, consistency, consistency. Do a weekly podcast. That is like the number one. I would say if there are any rules, it is there. And yes, if you can do that well, and it's not fluff and it's not burning you out, and you are able to do that out of an abundance place, then that's awesome. If you're in a season like your friend where it's crazy at work and you know that you can't show up well more than every 3 weeks, then that's awesome. I think your audience is going to understand that and communicating like, hey, my world is a little busy, but I still want to show up for you. That does wonders for your people that are listening.
I love that. So, yes, we both agree that we think that it's our belief consistency is the key, but we'll just say when there's sometimes a lack of consistency or how other people would define consistency, which I think gets us a lot in our head trash
Mm-hmm.
because then we feel like we have to define consistency that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's a hole or a misunderstanding, just make sure you communicate it. Put
Mm-hmm.
it in your description, the every other week podcast or every 3 weeks. You can share it in your intro or your outro, or I'll see you back here in 3 weeks. Or again, I think consistency and communication are key. You can define consistency. There's no rules around that. And I think that's really important. So, lots of amazing value here. So, get over the fear, come up with who you're creating for. What's your why? Why do you want to do this? Do not fall to imposter syndrome because you have a story to share through a filter that is unique to you and not anybody else's. And I think that's really important to learn from. So, Kristin, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, I have to ask you the one question that I ask all of my guests. That is, this show is called Imperfect Marketing because marketing is anything but a perfect science. What has been your biggest marketing lesson learned?
Just because it's trending doesn't mean that it's for you. I think for me, that has been my biggest lesson, and my faith journey has really helped me to kind of anchor that in over and over again of, am I doing this because that's what you're quote unquote supposed to do? Or do I really feel like that God is leading me towards this space in the season? Like, for instance, YouTube. Do I follow the YouTube trend? That was definitely one this last year that I had to like ask Holy Spirit, is that where you want me to focus? And I did. I faithfully showed up in that realm. Do I have a piece for next year? No, it might be just that was fun. I got behind the camera and that was that. So the leaning in and just always asking questions on what is this season and what does this rhythm look like is always really helpful for me.
And I did not start YouTube until episode 100 or 101. I can't remember which one. Because I liked showing up with my hair up in a ponytail
I know.
and not doing my makeup and saying, "No, we're not recording video. We're all good." I did give in to that one a little bit, and then started to put more effort behind my YouTube efforts and things like that. So hopefully you're watching the YouTube channel
Yes.
and you can see us both. If you're not, head on over there, youtube.com/at Kendra Corman. So Kristin, we'll have a link to set up a consultation with you in the show notes for sure. If somebody's looking to follow you or follow your podcasts, where do you recommend we send them?
If you go to podcastcoachingforkingdomentrepreneurs.com, you'll see my podcast. You'll see some free goodies on there too. But yeah, I just love talking to people. So don't be like, I don't want to be weird and schedule a call with her. I don't know if I really want to start a podcast. That's exactly who I would love to talk to, is just to hear your heart and hear your dream of starting a podcast and kind of hash it out with somebody. So I'd love to chat on a Zoom, or you can just go to my website and find the podcast and whatever platform you like to listen.
All right, great. Thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in, watching, or listening wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.